This is another edition of 3D Printing News Unpeeled, thanks to 3dprint.com. And today we are looking at news that Boston Micro Fabrication has raised more money. The Micro Fabrication company has raised a $24 million Series D round, which is very, very impressive considering today's investment climate, and shows that there is still, especially in areas that are rather unexplored, especially areas where people have found a niche that has a ridiculous or total addressable market, or things that are, where you're differentiating, you still can raise money, and a considerable amount of money. The round was led by Guotai Junan Securities with Chengxing Equity Investment Fund Partnership, Shangwei Xincai Manufacturing Sector Transformation Upgrading Fund, and others. Now, BMF has so far raised 79.3 million, which really, really underscores the huge opportunity there in micro-sized fabrication. It's an interesting company. They've got, the technology they promoted, the micron stereolithography type technology, and they're really focusing where a lot of other people are trying to say on nano or a bit bigger. They've really got a kind of nice area to play in that has a really, really big potential impact in medical device, in defense, in sensors, in lots and lots of areas. So especially if they can maintain making like actual production systems. So far, the customers of these things, I think we have about 2,000 customers or so. So far, the main customers for these things are like research labs and all this kind of stuff. But this stuff in optics and in MEMS and other areas can really, really go into actual manufacturing, and then it'd be at scale. Now, the interesting thing about this is you've probably noticed that a lot of the companies that were doing this round are Chinese, and the Biden administration last week has said that U.S. companies can't invest in artificial intelligence, quantum, some microprocessor type, and some fabrication type startups. So there is a divorce going on of sorts between the United States. On the one hand, the Europeans kind of caught in the middle, like some kind of teenage children, and China on the other hand. And a lot of companies are going to have to choose to a certain extent. And a lot of companies are going to either have to go all the way Chinese or try to stay a very ambiguous path, or they're going to go all the way American and have more access to American customers. So BMF here seems to be leaning towards more China-influenced kind of company. And the question is that going to, in the current political climate, make it so they don't get as many customers from the Defense Department, or make it so that they don't get a lot of money from local funding, or because they're an American company with Chinese funding, are they going to be able to have their cake and eat it too? So that's really interesting, and it's a bit weird that we as companies nowadays in a relatively small market have to start playing geopolitics. But hey, that's the reality, I think, of this. There should just be a projection microstereolithography company that just makes better and better machines. But now we live in an era where geopolitics, politics generally permeates everything. So that's something to take into account. The other news item comes to us from Breaking Defense, which is a defense kind of blog and news source, and they have a wonderful little interview with Rear Admiral Jason Lloyd. Jason Lloyd is the chief engineer of the entire U.S. Navy. He's also the deputy commander of ship design, integration, and naval engineering. So this man has a budget that I don't even want to hazard a guess, but I think it will outstrip the defense budget of most countries on this planet. And he talks to us about something really interesting. Now, the first thing is just a little bit of an anecdotal thing. It's nice stuff. The Bataan, which is a ship you see in front of you, this is a ship to kind of support a Marine Expeditionary Unit into doing its own very own little D-Day. It's like a D-Day in a box, right? It's got everything on it to do its own little landing somewhere. And what they have is they had a spare part, which would have cost them 400 grand and would have a 1-year wait time. And instead of having to wait that time and spend all that money, they 3D printed it. It was something called a deballasting air compressor, which actually changed the draft of the vehicle, which actually to me seems like a really kind of important, critical part. But they managed to source it with 3D printing in 5 days. So they're looking at this for sustainment, for quick repairs, reduced amount of casting in the United States, casting houses, CNC houses, that kind of like expertise is going. So that's one of the reasons he says that they're turning to 3D printing as well. Now, also, there's a really interesting passage in the interview, which I recommend you read, and it's linked below. Is that there's a different risk calculus for austere repair in kind of a military situation. So now they're kind of trying to stay really safe, but maybe they've already kind of considered what kind of improvised repair situations they're going to be opening up to in case of this being used in war, which of course is very different. I mean, if you may have an engine room part which you don't want to risk blowing up the engine in peacetime, but if you're being chased down by a group of carrier-borne aircraft or something, then maybe the calculus is a bit different. Maybe you do trust the 3D printed part because there's no other option but be getting shot down. So another interesting bit is that he wants to put a 3D printer in every regional maintenance center, every shipyard, metal printers on big deck ships and carriers, and polymer printers on the smaller ships. And this literally means everything. So this is really, really very interesting. As you know, there's some submarines and there's some aircraft carriers with 3D printers on them as we speak. So another thing is that he reveals here is that they have a Apollo lab. This is wonderful. So they've had this since 2018. This is the Naval Surface Warfare Center, Carderock, which is in Maryland. And Apollo lab, which I think, this is on my own supposition here, is that during NASA had this thing where if something would go wrong in the shuttle or even in the lander or other kind of earlier vehicles, they would have a lab on Earth with stuff in the water, but also stuff on land, where they would try to simulate and replicate the problem, right? And try to figure out if they on land could come up with any solutions with all the engineering guys that built this thing on land, trying to come up with a solution. So not just the astronauts would have to try it out live. So I think this is kind of a similar thing where they can try out the kind of experiments that they're doing and the kind of improvised parts. So if you do have to print that critical engine part, maybe the guys in Maryland do it first, and then you can do it in the middle of the ocean later on when it's been validated. Or maybe they help you with the correct G code, or they help you with the correct design or something like that. I think that's a really, really wonderful idea. And I think one of these Apollo lab kind of things should be a really, really good investment for companies as well to look at and trying to have something that, we do have that as a kind of competence center, but that's very kind of stayed and true. It's much more nicer to have like the frontline guys talk to the frontline guys in a kind of more open communication way. And I like this very much here. So I love this very much. Now, the other thing, which is kind of like seems like a silly thing at first, is that they got a new letters of authorization where low criticality parts, so those are the safety of human life and the ship itself is not in danger, they can 3D print just by having the approval of the commander of the ship. So she can then say, yes, we'll print this part, and that's it. They don't have to phone home. They don't have to go through all this rigmarole, no forms, nothing. She can just sign off on it if she commands her ship, and then she gets to decide if they make that part. So first off, there's going to be a need for a lot of ship commanders and aspiring ship commanders and in the U.S. Navy to figure out a little bit about 3D printing now, that it could cost them a ship if they make a little bit of a wrong decision there. So that's a bit of an opportunity there. And the other thing is that this means that he estimates that around 25% of all the components in the ship could now be open to the 3D printing, right? So that is huge. And this is a gigantic business opportunity. It's one of the biggest business opportunities out there. That's why I keep talking about the Navy. And it's just I don't know. There are lots and lots of countries that are smaller business opportunities than this Navy opportunity. So really, really dive on this, guys. This is going to be good. The next thing is news that Canopy and Re3D have gotten a Phase 2 SBIR awards. So Canopy makes reusable heat shields. They make 3D printed heat shields that are going to be on the spacecraft, and they're reusable, and that would save a lot of costs. It would also, there's a problem with getting enough heat shields because so many people want to launch so many vehicles. So the idea of reusing these things and making them more widely available could be huge to really, it's really holding back some launches in some cases. So that's Canopy getting money for that. They got money for it before, and now it's a SBR Phase 2, so they get some more money. And Re3D is a really awesome, sympathetic company, is getting a contract to make a recycling technology, so recycle to 3D print technology for 3D printing in orbit for thermoplastic. So that's also really good news, and that's all we have time for today. So thank you so much for your time. My name is Joris Peels. This is 3D Printing News Unpeeled, and you have a great day.